everybody, how's it going? What's going on? Hello, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Cam and this is my channel. Today we have a requested video from over on my live stream. I had a lot of people asking me what we basically got on the topic of true crime, serial killer documentaries, and I was just listing stuff off and they were like, can you please just do a video? And I was like, sure, I can do a video. So here we are today, and we are going to be talking about some crazy stuff, books, documentaries, everything that I have watched that is my absolute favorite and I want to show you guys. Disclaimer, I am in no way, shape, or form idolizing any of these people. I did not make these documentaries, so I'm definitely not like trying to idolize them, whatever. I read these books because I'm morbidly curious, and then also it gives me a sense of awareness that there's still people out there that are like this, that are just creeping around, and I would rather live my life knowing everything that they can do compared to me not knowing people are out there like that and not knowing what they can do. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So yes, that is my explanation for that. So yeah, I'm not idolizing them. I'm not worshiping these people. They're crazy. I'm not doing that. I'm a little bit crazy, but not like that, okay? So the first thing we're gonna be talking about is documentaries. So the first documentary that I think is pretty interesting, it is Invisible Monsters, the Serial Killers of America, and this is on the A&E channel. By far, this one is the most informational out of all the documentaries I've ever watched in my life. But this one right here, this is the daddy. This is the daddy, and the other documentaries are the babies. So this documentary, it talks about Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, the Green River Killer. I believe it talks about Ed Kemper as well, and it also talks about Jeffrey Dahmer, and then I believe the Night Stalker as well. So it talks about all of these serial killers and the fact that they all were literally operating at the same time but in different states, and nobody really put two and two together. And so there is some conspiracy theories going on to where there is like the secret society of serial killers that come together and they plan this meticulously to make sure that everything it is in line with each other. So you get John Wayne Gacy, you get Jeffrey Dahmer, you get Ted Bundy, you get the Green River Killer, and they're all operating between the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. But you also get the interviews with all of the victims. You get the interviews with all of the residents that were living next door. So one of the interviews that stuck out the most with me was Jeffrey Dahmer. So Jeffrey Dahmer was living in a predominantly black neighborhood. A lot of his victims were African American, people of color, indigenous, and his neighbor was an older African American woman, and she would kind of joke with him like, I noticed that like I see people going in your apartment but I don't see them coming out. And Jeffrey Dahmer literally was like, huh, yeah. And she goes, that's kind of weird. So one of these scenes, it was Jeffrey Dahmer's youngest victim. I believe he was 11 or 12 years old, unfortunately. So the woman who was his neighbor and everybody was trying to help this boy. They were trying to tell the police that this is a child, you need to take him. But Jeffrey Dahmer came out and was like, no, he's my lover, he's not a child, blah, blah, blah. The police didn't check his ID. They didn't check anything. They didn't check anything out. The neighbor made a point. She said, you have this clean-cut white guy living in an all-black neighborhood. Who are they going to believe? The white guy. And that showed just how much privilege that he had in that neighborhood to show he could do whatever he wanted to whatever he wanted and nobody would check him for it. You just got a lot of things that you just didn't really know. I feel like this documentary gives you a lot more than any documentary I've ever watched, period. It had all of it. So Hidden Monsters, the Serial Killers of America is one of the documentaries you should take a look at. So the next documentary that I want to recommend to you guys, it is I Survived a Serial Killer, and that is also on the A&E channel. So this one, it piggybacks off of the first one, Hidden Monsters of America, but it talks purely about the victims and how they dealt with their trauma and just how they were able to, I guess, cope with their lives after what happened to them. It just reminds you that there's still people out there who survived these absolute psychos and they still have a story to tell. And there are some people who idolize they're would-be killers, and they have to live their life knowing that there's people out there who see them as kind of like a sideshow, and they want to get in contact with them. And it just talks a lot about that in Survivor's Guild, and how basically their entire lives have changed. So if you really want to read something that's more of a victim impact, then I highly recommend How I Survived a Serial Killer. The next show I want to talk about, it is one of my personal favorites, and it is American Ripper, and that is on the History Channel. So what this show it is about the notorious H.H. Holmes, who is America's first known serial killer. So with this TV show, it is his great-great-grandson, Jeff Mudgett, and he has a lot of evidence to show that he believes that his great-great-grandfather, H.H. Holmes, is actually Jack the Ripper. When I saw he had a great-great-grandson, I was like, he has living relatives? But he does. He had 2 children, with one was his legal wife and the second one was his illegal wife. He had a boy and a girl, and he comes from, I believe, his son's line. So Jeff and Amaryllis Fox, who is a former CIA operative, they decide to travel from America to England to track down the leads that they have to show that they believe that H.H. Holmes was Jack the Ripper. You guys, the evidence they have, I'm gonna let you guys watch it. I'm not gonna spoil it. That's just a little bit of something that's going on in the show, because there is a lot more to show that this man left a lot more evidence that he could be Jack the Ripper. So I'm gonna leave that to you guys. But American Ripper on the History Channel, that's a show that you guys definitely need to watch. The next show, it is Confessions of a Serial Killer on BTK, and this is also on the A&E channel. So in this show, it talks about Dennis Rader, aka the BTK killer. And the first time since he was caught, he is giving a full-blown interview to a personally selected psychologist named Dr. Catherine Ramsland, and he decides to give her a full-blown interview and tell her everything. So I believe this one was a 3-part or 3-episode series. And so basically what Dr. Catherine does is BTK contacts her and says, I will tell you everything if you can basically solve this riddle. So over a period of time, the two correspond, and he sends her letters and riddles, and she has to solve them. And being an amazing person that she is, she solves it like that and is like, okay, let's talk. And so he's like, okay, let's talk. So BTK gives her the details, he gives her the tea, he gives her everything. And just listening to this man talk, it just shows how detached a person can be. So basically, Dr. Catherine asks him a very interesting question. She asks him, how would you feel if somebody came into your home and did what you did to your family? And this man's response was, well, I guess it's karma. I guess it's karma. Are you kidding me? And you just hear his responses of everything, and you just see how gone he is mentally, especially when it comes to the crimes he committed. I do have an interest in psychology, so I usually take down notes just to compare with other serial killers, but I definitely think that is a documentary that you guys would be interested in. So Confessions of a Serial Killer, BTK, is one of the shows I think you guys would be interested in. So the next show that I think you guys would be interested in, it is The Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, and this is on Netflix. Richard Ramirez was a serial killer, rapist, child molester, burglar. He was all of it, and he operated between 1984 and 1985, and he would travel to people's homes, he would rob them, unfortunately commit sexual assault against the women in the house, and he also committed murder and child molestation and kidnapping. So you're following the two main detectives that were the ones that caught Richard Ramirez, and basically how difficult it was to catch this man. It was just pure flukes how this man got away the first couple times. So I remember one of the first times he got away, he was going to a dentist because he had like a tooth infection, and they were able to get his DNA and track him to the dentist. So they went to the dentist's office. They told the dentist, you are servicing a serial killer, and we need you to let us know when he comes in. They installed a panic button and everything. Told him, when he comes in, we need you to press this button so we can just like come and get him. Richard Ramirez comes back to the dentist's office, and he wants to get the procedure done and everything. The man he's pressing on this button. He's like, he's here, come and get him. button was broken, was not working. Richard Ramirez obviously didn't know that that was happening, so he just said, you know what, never mind, I'm just gonna go. And he left, and they missed him. Just like seeing how close they were to catching this man was insane, because unfortunately he did go on to commit several more murders, and you get to see reenactments of the murders. You unfortunately do see some of the crime scene photos, so I do recommend that you guys, if you don't want to see any of that, you might want to skip over this documentary, because they do show victims and crime scenes, so be warned. But I don't really see a lot of documentaries about him that give you more detail than what he really did, and this one, it shows crime scene photos, gives you phone calls, it gives you all of that. So if that is something you think that you might want to watch, then The Night Stalker on Netflix is something that you guys might want to take a look at. The next documentary I want to tell you guys about, it is The Raincoat Killer, which is Korea's first serial killer. So the Raincoat Killer, it is Yoo Young-chul. I think I said that right. If I did, yay me. So Yoo Young actually hated women and the wealthy, so he made both his target. He would slip into extravagant homes and kill the owners and everybody in the home, and he would also visit prostitution rings and locations, and he would lure them to his apartment and murder them in his bathroom, and he would dismember them and dispose of them elsewhere. And we also get to see a lot of how the justice system works in South Korea, which I thought was pretty interesting, considering that they don't really have serial killers working in that country. So this man completely stumped them, and they had no idea how to deal with this. They were not equipped to deal with this, because this has never happened before, and he was working so fast to where they really didn't have any time to connect the murders to anything, or even really find any kind of motive behind the killings. They thought that they were just random, but his visit to a massage parlor changed all of that. I really think you guys should watch the documentary. It's super interesting, because like I said, South Korea, they don't really have serial killers. That's not really something that happens. So seeing how they had to change their entire justice system around this one person because he just kept evading captivity, it was interesting. Serial killers, it makes you rethink how you do things, because sometimes you're just not equipped to deal with it, and this documentary, it showed all of it, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So The Raincoat Killer on Netflix is something I think you guys might want to take a look at. So the last documentary I want to tell you guys about, it is Catching Killers on Netflix. So this show, it is an ongoing series where detectives give harrowing details and accounts of how they were able to catch some of America's worst serial killers. But this one is a little different. It talks about Eileen Wuornos, it talks about the Phoenix serial shooter, and then it also talks about the Kansas Village killer, or it's like the Canadian Village killer. I think it was Kansas. So sorry, it was the Toronto Village killer. So a lot of these, it does delve into a little bit more about the unknown serial killers and the not so popular ones. I hate that, but it is what it is. And the details on how the detectives caught those killers. It is on season 2, and I need to watch season 2, by the way, but it's pretty interesting because you get the crime scene photos, you get the details, you get the detective interviews, you get the psychoanalysis on the serial killers, you get it all. And it's super interesting because, like I said, some of these, I didn't know anything about a Phoenix serial shooter. I didn't know anything about the Toronto serial village killer. So this one, it talks about a little bit more outside of America when it comes to those kinds of individuals. So I thought this one, it opened up a lot more about those kinds of people and where else they operated. It is on Netflix, and it's still taping, it's still going, and it's on season 2 right now. So I would definitely give that one a look. So now that we have documentaries done, let's talk about my favorite subject, which is books. So the first book that I want to tell you guys about, it is John E. Douglas, the man, the legend, the true crime profiler god. So this book, it is basically the written version of the TV show Mindhunters. It talks about John E. Douglas's life and how he was able to solve and help profile some of America's most prolific serial killers. So basically, I recommend reading this book before you watch the television series, because even though it kind of gives you the same thing, it gives you a little bit more insight into how he helped the FBI create the profiling unit and how he basically was the Faja the father of the profiling unit, because John E. Douglas, if I remember correctly, one of his things was, in order to catch crazy, you got to think crazy. I believe that's what he said. Don't quote me on that. So this book, it gives a little bit more inside detail to some of his most famous cases, like BTK, Ted Bundy, I believe also Ed Kemper. He was one of the only people to interview Ed Kemper because Ed Kemper apparently liked him quite a bit. I can never imagine. I could never imagine talking to the people that this man talked to. I would be crapping my pants in fear, but he did it, and he was able to analyze all of these people. So this book, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I'm also going to be talking about another couple books by him. Just you wait, just you wait. But if you really want to get into the John Douglas life, I definitely recommend that you guys read Mindhunters first. Following up with my John Douglas fan club over here, we have The Killers Across the Table. So in this book, John tells us never before seen or heard details of some of the most memorable and horrific cases of his career. So in this book, we do see a lot of his profiling tactics, what he does to get information out of the killers, and how he analyzes things that they say. And it is by far the most interesting thing. It is so interesting. And to be totally honest, if this man were to profile everybody before their parole release, I'm pretty sure some of the people that are out would probably not be out on the streets causing chaos today, because this man looks further into what they say than a normal person would. It is absolutely amazing, and this book is absolutely incredible. Trigger warnings all throughout this book. It does show child assault in the worst ways possible, so I do recommend you think about it before picking this book up. But The Killer Across the Table by John Douglas is one of my recommendations. Continuing on into John Douglas, the next book, it is When a Killer Calls. So this book, it is about the horrific killing of Deborah May Helmick and Sherry Smith, and the horrible creature named Larry Jean Bell, who murdered them. So John Douglas describes this as one of the most horrific cases he has had to work on, and also one of the cases that he took on personally and made sure that personally this killer was caught. So in 1985, 2 days before her high school graduation, Sherry Smith was abducted by Larry Jean Bell, and what Mr. Bell did was call the family and basically taunt them about how he had their daughter and how she was going to go to heaven and all this other kinds of bull crap. And then a few days later, he called the family again, letting them know, unfortunately, where Sherry's body would be. So here comes the man of the hour, my favorite person ever, John Douglas, and he comes in to profile this killer, where we have no witnesses, no DNA evidence. We have absolutely nothing, not even a footprint to show where Sherry has gone. So over the time that John Douglas is working for the family, this monster, Larry Jean Bell, decides to kidnap 9-year-old Deborah May Helmick, where he unfortunately caused the exact same pain that he caused on Sherry's family on this poor little girl's family as well. And I just want to read this from the book because I do have the book here, and as you guys can see, I annotated the absolute crap out of this book because it is just so interesting and also just so infuriating. I have a lot of red tabs in this book, but we're not going to get into that. Douglas and the FBI pushed criminal profiling to its limits, culminating in one of his most dramatic and effective confrontations with a sadistic and remorseless killer. Once you read this book, we obviously have interviews with John Douglas and also Larry Jean Bell, and just, I can't even talk. Reading this interview pissed me off to no extent, because this man was literally playing games with them and the families, and he just thought it was so hilarious. This man was literally laughing. The fact that he killed this girl who's about to graduate high school and this 9-year-old baby. So I definitely, all awards go to John Douglas, because this man has seen and heard some stuff, and how he helped form the FBI profiling unit today, it's just absolutely amazing. So I have the utmost respect for this man. When a Killer Calls is one of the books I think you guys should take a look at. So the next book I want to talk to you guys about, it is The Zodiac Killer by Robert Graysmith. We all know about the Zodiac Killer, and if you do not know, the Zodiac Killer was an American serial killer where he went around with a hood on, where he was murdering and torturing his victims in secluded areas like lovers' lanes and just really dark, secluded areas. But this journalist was able to get some of the letters from the Zodiac Killer, and he decided to create this book talking about a lot of key details and information about this killer. And I think it's really interesting. This is the original 1969 copy that he came out with when he was investigating the killings. So I really wanted to get that real first-hand experience that he had when he was investigating the Zodiac Killer, because apparently the Zodiac Killer was not very happy that he was writing this book. From what we understand, Robert Graysmith said that he was receiving phone calls from a very mysterious person with like heavy breathing, nobody talking on the other end, and it didn't stop until after he stopped writing his book. I think this book will definitely give me a little bit more information about everything that he did and the victims and basically the investigation in behind who the Zodiac Killer was. So yes, The Zodiac by Robert Graysmith is something that I think you guys might be interested in. So the next book I want to talk about, it is Lady Killers, the Deadliest Women Throughout History. This book, it gives a chronological timeline of all of the dangerous, deadliest women in history, and not just American history, but also medieval times, British killings, German killers, everywhere. So this book I thought was pretty interesting because not everybody talks about women serial killers just because they're not as common as male serial killers, but they're still out there. They're still out there and they're just as brutal. And the interesting thing that I found in this book was that a lot of the killers were the elderly. They were elderly women. And I just thought that was, I didn't know that. So I thought this book definitely added more light to women and just how dangerous women can also be. So this book, it talks about Bloody Mary, it talks about Eileen Wuornos, it talks about I think it was like the Black Widow, which is a woman who was literally having children and just killing them. And a lot of these women got away with it simply because they were women, and women they just can't do anything like that. She's a lady. Come on. So I thought this book was very, very interesting. Now, it doesn't give you too much detail into the women. It just gives you like the general information, like their name and who was their first victim, how they operated a little bit, and if they were caught. But it's still an interesting read. It is quite a long read, I'm not gonna lie, but that just means that there's a lot more lady killers out there that we just did not know about. So if you'd like to read a little bit more about women in the serial killer odd universe, then Lady Killers of the World might be something that you're interested in. So the next book, I did miss this one somehow, and it is The Anatomy of Motive by John E. Douglas. So this book, this is basically if you want to start getting into criminal profiling and how it's done and how they analyze, I definitely recommend this book because I have considered a career in profiling. I'm not pursuing it seriously. I just think it's something that's super interesting to learn about. But this one gives you the psychology behind it. It gives you the reasons why some of the people do what they do, the things, the connectors in the brain that cause people to do what they do. It is very, very, very informational, and it talks a little bit more into basically the psyche of the individual and why they do what they do, such as like childhood traumas, accidents, head injuries, things like that, into how that can form a person and how that can lead them into having a very, very different lifestyle when they grow up. But I just thought it was a really interesting read. So The Anatomy of Motive by John E. Douglas is a very informational and very interesting book that I think you might like. So the last book, the book that everybody was asking me about, and it is The Serial Killer Book of Serial Killers. This book is almost the encyclopedia of serial killers. This book gives you an A to Z list of America, the world's serial killers. Now, I will say, this book does not give you a lot of detail about the serial killers, but it just tells you who they are and it gives you the gist of what they did. There is a serial killer encyclopedia. I forgot who it was written by, but that one has a little bit more detail. But still, I personally think that the Serial Killer Book of Serial Killers is something that tells you who all these people were. It gives you a little bit about the cases, but at the same time, you're able to get the gist of who they were and what they did. It gives you the facts, it gives you the interviews, it gives you the motive, and it also has, oddly enough, trivia in the back of the book that asks you questions about what you read. And I thought that was a little odd, but I was kind of just like, okay, I guess like somebody might use it, but I'm not gonna use it. Like I said, I'm not idolizing these people in any way, shape, or form, but you would be so surprised at the amount of people that are in this book. And like I said, the reason why I researched some of this stuff is because you have no idea who a person is. So this book, a lot of it is just people that you would not suspect were serial killers, but they were. So I definitely thought that this book it blew my mind when it came to cases that I didn't even know about. The thing that I find the most interesting about this book is that a lot of it is serial killers and people that we don't really know about, we don't really hear about. It does have like BTK, and it does have Ted Bundy and Eddie Kemper, stuff like that. But there's also other people in what's like smaller towns where they committed like the worst crimes you can ever imagine. So I thought that was kind of interesting, considering that we only know about a handful of them. But this one, it lists like crazy people. They're all crazy people, but this one, it's got an A to Z listing of all the crazies. It is definitely something that somebody, I think, would be interested in looking at if criminal profiling is something that they would want to do, or if you're just morbidly curious like me, I would go ahead and take a look at it. But like I said, it's not for the faint of heart. But The Killer Book of Serial Killers is one of the books that is on my to-read list that I think you guys would be interested in. I am definitely going to have to cleanse myself after talking about all these books because it's a lot, but we are done. That is it for the video, you guys. Like I said, I am not idolizing these people in any way, shape, or forms. This is just a list of books and documentaries that I have read, I have watched, that gave me a lot of information that I did not know about people. And like I said, I go into these books with the utmost respect for the victims. I do not focus on the actual perpetrator. I really like now that some of these books are starting to include more from the victims and how this affected their lives and how these people damaged basically their everything. So I really respect that authors are starting to respect the victims a lot more when it comes to writing these books. So this is the books that I recommend where it does have a lot more sympathy for the victims. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Any recommendations, like I said, you guys want to hear from me. And don't forget, on Wednesdays, we do have our reading sprints. So this Wednesday, I will be here with you at 6 p.m. for our weekly reading sprint. So if you guys see this outfit in another video, it's because I filmed another video directly after this one. But you know, we got to get the videos out for you guys because I promise you more content. And yeah, I'm gonna stop rambling now. So thank you guys so much for watching. I love you all so much. Thank you for all your love and support, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.